Oh, I love that. The story about Jack's stuck in my mind because I've had horses not want to get in trailers and op often thought like there's a reason for this. There's something going on there. Uh,
Hmm.
so along with what you do with the horses and the video and being with them and the animal communication, you do tapping. Do you do tapping with horses or to help people with horses in that relationship, or is that really separate with just people?
Well, the thing with tapping, so just for people who don't know, we're talking about an acupressure tapping method. So the most common one that people know is called EFT, and you just tap on acupuncture points while you're saying, going through the process. So where this came from was, again, back to my health business, listen to your gut.
Mhm.
I have extremely severely chronically long-term ill people that are going through my program. And for any kind of chronic illness, when you're looking at why this disease and not some other? Why have I done all this, but I'm not healing? A
Mhm.
foundational root of your dis-ease, your unease, your imbalance
Mhm.
is almost always going to be found at the emotional or spiritual layer of your existence. And so I had been telling my readers just for decades, you have to use simultaneously a healing therapy that integrates the mind, soul, and body, right? So that would be the acupressure tapping, hypnotherapy, somatic experiencing, craniosacral level 2 or higher. You have to get into that. Well, the issue with that was if you go to see a practitioner for any of those therapies, you're looking at, well, here you're looking at a minimum of $150 a session.
Mhm.
That's on the cheap side. So how many, when you have someone with a chronic illness who has so many layers of trauma, how long is that going to take to clear that from someone who's too sick to work and generate money? And so then I would say to them, I would say, you know what, go and find a course on, EFT tapping, because that's something you can do for yourself. Once you learn the technique, and I found it so helpful, I became a certified practitioner because I was using it for my kids, for my animals, for my friends and family members. So I thought I really wanted to learn this. So I became a certified EFT practitioner. Well, then I went looking and people were like, I can't find a course. I'm like, oh, I go looking. Well, no, because all of the courses that teach you how to tap to the place where you can actually affect change are geared for people who want to be practitioners and therapists. And so guess how much they cost?
Mhm.
$3,000, which fine, if it's going to be your business, that's a reasonable amount to pay. But again, we're back to the cost issue. So then I teamed up with another friend of mine who's also a certified practitioner, and we created this course, which is my version of it, which I really emphasize the mind-body connection. So I called my version laser tapping. So if you go to lasertapping.com, you can try a free session with me. You've got a choice of 3 sessions that usually apply to most people. So that's where and that's what I then made available to all my people, all my health people, to be like, you've got to get into this emotional, spiritual layer. And here's a way you can do it at a fraction of the cost, right? So that's that program. And so then the horses, of course, know that I have this knowledge. And this is the way that you know that a healing therapy is very effective, is if your animals ask you to do a session.
Mhm.
And so I first became aware of it. I had 2 cats from the same litter, again, both feral. A neighbor's a feral cat had them in an old car on her property. And we got this panic call, and she was like, the coyotes and the raccoons have already killed 2 of them today. The whole litter is going to be dead by tomorrow. Can you take a kitten? Because if you don't take them, they're going to be dead. So we were like, okay. And we went over, and so we took 2 kittens. Well, the one kitten was the most terrified being I've ever seen in my life. And because she held this energy of fear and terror, guess what she created in her reality? Every bad thing that could happen happened to this cat. Like, and it was insane. Like, and I'll give you an example, like opening, you hold a door open for her because she wants to go outside. Okay, go outside. But she's too scared because she's afraid that the door is going to close on her. So you're like, I'm here, you're safe, you can go through the door. But she has this, again, we're back into the emotional, spiritual trauma body The minute I move, that door could hit me and I could be dead, is what she's running, right? So she doesn't go and she doesn't go. Fine, you go, okay, fine. You let go of the door. The minute as the door starts to close is when she decides to go, then guess what? She gets hit by the door. And it was interesting because my kids were young at this time. And I was like, do you see what marbles is doing? Do you see how your energy creates your reality, how you get back what you put out? So she was this amazing teacher for me and the kids. So anyway, again, right, I got 2 businesses, I got 3 young kids. I sit down with this cat, I go, you got 1 session, let's go. So I do a tapping session on her behalf, and that's called surrogate tapping. So once you learn the technique, yeah, you can do sessions for your any pet, any animal. You could even do it on behalf of another human, although I don't recommend that, because you really, for humans, like, we need to take responsibility for healing ourselves, if at all possible. However, I'll tell you where it's useful. When you're on an airplane and you got a screaming baby, am I tapping for that baby? You bet I am. Because we're going to help that baby so the whole plane can be helped. So that's
where are those spots? I have a trip coming up just in case.
Yeah, well, but you have to know the whole technique. So.
Okay, right.
Yeah, but here's some easy spots just for people who are experiencing, like, let's see, you've got a lot of fear or anxiety that runs up. A really good spot is right here. So this is your little divot, you know, in your chest, and here's your collarbones. And so you go just below that divot right here. So you can either do it with 4 fingers, or you can just do it with a loose fist. This is called the thymus thump, because this is your thymus gland right here. So you just tap there and you feel your feelings. I'm feeling really scared. I'm feeling high anxiety. I don't think I can handle this. I'm super anxious right now. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And you just keep tapping, and that alone, or the other one is on the side of your hand, same thing, 4 fingers. You just tap on this and you speak your feelings either out loud or in your head. And because this helps those feelings, instead of being trapped, to start flowing through the meridian system of your body. So even if you just use those 2 points, you will likely experience some shift in intensity, or, you know.
I'm just curious because I have a horse that's coming up laminitic and she has a history of this. Is this something that you could use for that?
Yes, and ironically, I have a tapping video for laminitis.
Oh, you do?
On my YouTube channel.
Oh, gosh.
For free. Just go there and follow along and substitute. When I say I am Montaro tapping for Montaro, you say your horse's name.
Sipsy.
I am, what is it?
Her name's Sipsy.
Yeah, I am Sipsy tapping for Sipsy. I'm Sipsy tapping for Sipsy 3 times. I'm Sipsy tapping for Sipsy. And then you just follow along with me in the video.
Oh, I'm excited.
The people who've done it said, wow, this completely changed my perspective, and I got more information, and yeah.
Great.
Just go to my YouTube channel and type in laminitis on the search box for my channel. It'll pull it right up.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. So do you still ride?
Well, so at the point that Zora said, I want a team. And now I'm into 3 horses, 3 more horses, 4. And I didn't even tell you. So after I got the 3 horses, the 5 acres, I was like, okay, I can just manage this on this 5-acre property by rotating fields. Well, the people who owned that land, who had never had a horse or anything to do with horses, and because I put some money in, I created a gravel paddock and I built a new shelter, because they had guaranteed me that I could have the place for a minimum of a year, but really unended, because the only thing that they would do if I left was maybe put some cows on there to keep the grass down. Well, they had been watching me with my horses, and I would often, and their lawn was here, and then the pastures rolled away. There would be times I would be down here like 4 acres away from them in the pasture. I'd look up and I'd see them sitting on their lawn chairs. I became their TV. They would literally sit on their lawn with a drink and watch me with the horses, because they were absolutely taken with what they saw happening with these feral horses and me. I didn't even, most of the time I was not even aware that they were doing this. I was like, well, they're so far away, what can they see? Well, apparently they saw enough that they became completely taken up and inspired. And within a month or two of me getting the 3 new horses, they go on an auction for a slaughter rescue on Facebook, and they buy a horse. And
Wow.
it's going to be delivered in 24 hours. And I was like, oh my God. And they were like, we were so inspired. And then we saw this horse and she was going to slaughter too. We couldn't, so we just got her. And I was like, oh my Lord. And I said, well, I don't know if this herd is going to accept her, because
Oh, they were going to integrate it with yours
they were
without
there.
talking to you first.
Yes, it's their
Okay.
land. So I get told the horse is arriving in 24 hours. So I created a separate area for the horse, and I said, we're just going to have to see what happens. Wow.
Oh, that's the video of the one that gets let out of that little spot. Maybe that's not the same one. No.
No, I didn't video their horse.
Okay. Okay.
No, she wouldn't have been in any of mine. But basically, we tried a number of different ways.
Mhm.
And the herd, Odalina in particular, would not even let her approach the fence line. She would go after her with teeth bared. And I was like, okay, they cannot be integrated. So guess what then has to happen? I have to leave because it's their land. Which again, long term, very, very insanely stressful and difficult, but turned out to be the best thing for the long term. Gets us onto this other property.
Mhm.
So that had also been happening at the same time.
So things are really different now with 11 horses. So riding is no longer really
yeah. So my
option,
point about telling that story was to show you how the mayhem increased exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
Who has time for riding at this point?
Right. That's
right.
Thinking.
And now I've got 3 semi-feral horses. So I'm at the point in my own journey where I still believe I have to get these horses halter trained at least, because what happens if they all escape? How am I going to get them back into the pasture? Like, I need to halter train. So now I'm back to the very beginning with, like, especially with Odie, this, like I said, the sight of a rope, she's gone. So I have to start. So that took up a lot of time and energy. And then I had to get them used to going out, on the roads and blah, blah, blah. That takes, so the whole thing just kind of went by the wayside. And then by this time we're shooting the YouTube videos and we're into a whole other realm. We've gone so far down the rabbit hole, there's no coming back from it, right? And so riding just became this, and it, from time to time I'd be like, oh, I'd love to, but now the only way I want to ride is like, I mean, I've always ridden bareback since I was a child, but now the only way that I want to ride is with nothing on their face, or not even a neck rein or anything, and I want to just be able to go and be in that. So from time to time, the horses, especially Odie, she would give me exercises to do. She'd be like, stand there and do this with your energy field. And I would fail and I would fail. And then I'd be like, oh, screw this. So I got so many chores to do, and then I'd go back to do. So the riding conversation with us is not over. I still would love to ride again, but there's just been literally no time to devote to that, because there's been so many other things that are more important. And so, and I guess the importance of riding for me has faded, because I found that deep connection, that deep communication in so many other ways. And you have to, as a horse person, you have to always understand that it doesn't matter how connected you are and how sentient and your telepathic communication. Like, I'm on a 160-acre wilderness ranch. If a cougar comes out of that tree line, the horse I'm riding is taken off. There's not going to be any dialogue or any communication. It's going to bolt immediately. Now I'm 55. What happens if the horse bolts and I take a tumble? Can I afford to be injured at this point in my life? So there's that whole specter that's entered into it. And we are, like, we have cougar, bobcat, lynx, bears, moose. We have everything here. And the horses are on high alert. And I have 4 guardian dogs. And so, yeah, I could ride, but it's, with everything, you have to take your physical environment into consideration as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I understand what you're saying about that. I have little bits that are similar in some ways. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm not saying no. It's the dialogue is still open.
Yeah, yeah, it's a hard edge. I've found this edge and I've gone back and forth with it until finally I came up with, if I'm going to give them a choice, it has to be a real choice. I can't just give that lip service, because
Yeah.
otherwise what happens is they call me on the bullshit and I end up feeling really, really awful. So I
Yeah.
finally came up with, as far as health, safety, and travel go, we're gonna be in benevolent leadership. You're gonna really need to do what I ask you to do. But it's not a hard line. Like there's questions, there's some negotiation. Um, but when I ride, I want to be able to go on co-created rides where we're really in it together. And I may not be bareback and bridleless, but I'm probably bareback, pad, and halter, or Bazelle. That's my favorite riding stuff. Um, but it's a difficult line to walk. And once you
Yeah.
have the knowledge, you can't unlearn what you know.
No. No.
You really can't. And so that's what I call the quiet revolution in the horse world,
Yeah.
is so much knowledge. And I think a lot of it comes from people doing equine assisted practices or some kind of emotional healing work with horses or for horses, that open up to some amount of telepathy
Yeah.
where you can't go back. And there's so many of us now that I feel like there's a real tipping point of that spilling into traditional horsemanship and softening some of those pure dominance practices that, even if they look gentle, like there's so much natural horsemanship that I watch and watch with some people that I feel like are on board with me, that it's still like the people doing some of those videos are not consciously in their body while they're making the video, which is a very difficult thing to do. Like they may be in a heart space when they work normally, but somebody
Yeah.
turns that camera on,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the minute you start talking, you're jumping out of your gut and your heart. Now
Yeah.
you're in your head.
Yeah.
And people just don't seem to understand this. And so this is the package that I'm calling the quiet revolution. And so one of the things I like to ask people on the podcast are you part of the quiet revolution, and how?
Well, and I would also expand that question, because I don't think it's just a question of, do you want to ride today or do you want to ride right now?
Mm-hmm.
The horse may say yes. And then you get on and
Mm-hmm.
you're riding for whatever amount of time. And the horse is like, okay, I want you to get off now.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to get off? Or are you going to come up with 5 reasons why you can't get off right now? It's too far for me to walk home. There's nowhere for me to get back on, and that's where our agenda driven and I am the first person to admit, and I say this in all my videos, like my default to dominance is so strong. I was an abused child.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, do what I say or I'll beat the shit out of you, right? That's my entire upbringing. So I have such a default to dominance that I almost for many years had to go 100%. Like benevolent leadership for me was like, no, I cannot do that. You open the door for that to me, I'm going to dominance. I know it. It's my default setting. So I would have to go 100% the other way, to saying to the horse, you're in charge. We're just going to do what you say, and I'm not going to have a player in this game. I'm just going to do what you say. And what was interesting for me is when I went to that far extreme, I realized, damn, these horses always, and I'm not kidding when I say always, I'm talking 100% hit rate, have better ideas than me. So if I had allowed myself to have any kind of leadership or direction, my idea would have been this. Their idea is always better. So then I went, well, what's the point? I might as well just do what I say. But then that's when Odalina started talking to me about, yes, but what do you want? Right? So you can't just leave the game entirely. Like if you have a heart's desire to ride, to sit on my back and have me carry you, then we have to enter into that conversation. You have to own it. And then, so that's where we're at now, of all these other things expanding, and then her putting me through exercises to go see where your energy's at. And you'll see where it is at, because we are in an open field. We are not in an arena, and you are doing what I'm telling you to do. And then you're going to see how me and the other horses respond to you.
So can you tell me a little bit more about that? Is that like an exercise of expanding the electromagnetic field of your heart? Is it moving your energy up and down your chakras or grounding? What does that mean when you talk about that energy?
Well, it's basically whatever she says she tells me to do on the day. So I'll give you an example because this is on my blog, because I actually had a friend there and the horses told her start taking photos. So again, I didn't know she pulled out her phone because she was off in the corner and I was in this, we have this huge, it's an old cattle barn. So it's really big with like 25-foot high ceilings. And Odie had told me to go stand on one of the slow feeders. And she said, stand. So then I would be at the height where she could walk up next to me and I could gently get on her back, right? Because she's a Belgian mare, she's tall. So she said, go stand on that slow feeder. She said, and hold the intention of what you want from me through all the levels of your body. So I went and I did that and in silence. And when I did, it sounds super simple, right? But when I did that, the things that were coming up to my mind, to my heart, through my energy field, and you could see there was this unworthiness or unwillingness to stand in my heart's desire. And at the same time, my friend Juliette's taking photographs of me, and you can see it in my body, my unwillingness and my hesitation and of which I was aware that I was feeling this. But again, like we have a disconnect. We don't understand that everything that we are feeling, thinking is reflected in both our physical and our energetic body. And so I couldn't do it. I literally could not hold my heart's desire in purity and grounded connection. And so and I did that over and over and over. And then one time I'm doing it, Kalia, one of the strongest females, walks up right next to me. And I'm like, no, I am not getting on your back. I'm like, oh, this is the answer I get, Kalia? No, hell no. Because for Kalia, she's, so we tried to trade, this is when we were trying to we thought she'd leave without her herd. She's 9 months pregnant and using no tools. There's no whip, there's no nothing. The rescue owner and the trailer guy who has 20 years experience trailering wild horses were just gently walking towards her to get her to move towards the trailer. She scaled a 5-foot steel arena panel, like climbed it over and then blew through a solid 4-board wood fence.
Wow.
That's Kalia. That's the horse who's offering me her back. I was like, hell no, sister, because you could feel my weight, and then you could, I think it's interpreting my.
Yeah,
but I went like this. Let's see if I can turn that off.
I don't know what that is. That's funny. There's some AI thing.
I know. I was like, you could feel my weight on your back, and then all of a sudden decide, I don't want you on here, and I'm flying through the air in the next millisecond. So the dialogue is fascinating to me of what ensues.
Yeah. And the trust. It's interesting to me what you're talking about, because teaching intention is part of how I've been teaching writing. It's not like I have a lot of students, but I occasionally get a couple and I like to work with them one-on-one. But to get my horse to go somewhere, you have to have intention. You can't just use aids. That doesn't work. They won't go. And then with the equine assisted practices that I do, often it's like Jungian type work with toys and big sand tray in an arena with the horses. And a lot of what you were describing about what comes up emotionally will happen. And so like, I know those two things, but I don't know them as like one thing together necessarily for me. I mean, it's fascinating because anytime we're with horses, it is an opportunity to work on ourselves.
Absolutely.
And it's right there and it's in your face. And different people take that challenge differently. But when you respond with just dominance, or you respond with fear, or you're still working on coming up with all the trust that you absolutely need, especially as our bodies get older, like that trust thing is harder, right? Because the risks are higher.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but
and here's another thing in part of my dialogue with Odie. I would like, let's say, so then I got to the place where I can hold that. I can hold my heart's desire in integrity through all the levels of myself. I can own it without projecting it, just owning it in my own space, in my own truth. And then the next thing that Odie says to me is she says, I'm worried about you fall. We cannot afford for you to be hurt. She's like, this is our primary mandate. Everything rests on you. You cannot be hurt. So I need you to train your body. And she showed me pictures of me doing dive rolls and somersaults so that if you fall, you are not going to be hurt by the fall. And I was like, ugh, that's been a long time. So I went and I was like, when is the last time I did a somersault? I could not even remember. Like, do you know the last time you did a somersault?
no, but I know the last time I did a handstand, because I can't do them anymore, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? So I go, well, I think I'm okay. I'm going to go in. And when I got to my house, I was like, I'm going to do a somersault. I did a somersault and it hurt my head and I was disoriented. And I was like, wow, this is one of those use it or you lose it as you age. So then I started going out on my daughter, because she's a gymnast. We have a trampoline. So I just started going out and doing somersaults and then I got busy and I didn't even get to the dive rolls. So now our riding conversation is stopped because I'm not willing to do, and like valid, like I said, a cougar can come out, she bolts sideways, I'm hitting the dirt. How am I going to land? They cannot afford for me to have anything broken. They can't afford for me to have a concussion. Like no one can, right? So that's where things kind of stalled again. And then I was there one day and I was just like, little bullshit little mood that you get into. And I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm spry. And she's like, right. I'm like, no, look, watch. And I run it the 4-foot slow. It's about 3 feet off the ground. I'm like, watch. And I run at it to show I'm going to leap on this and show you how spry I am. And I trip and I end up like sprawled across the slow feeder. And she just kind of looks at me and walks slowly away. I was like, oh, beautiful, beautiful. So yeah.
Yeah. They are so wonderful. Could you even imagine your life without horses at this point?
No, I mean, no. And even like now, it's interesting when you move horses to different environments, because now that we're on this 160-acre ranch, which it's awesome because my whole living room, kitchen, dining room has floor to ceiling windows. So I have a 360 view of the ranch. So I can see the horses usually, unless they're like up in a tree line or really far away. And I have binoculars there that I can just grab. So I can see them and connect with them at any time physically even. And so what's been interesting is I'm actually physically going out there less, because it's like I feel like they're a part of my life. Whereas before, when I had to drive to a separate location to physically see them, I would make sure I would get there, 4, sometimes 5 times a week. And now it's just like everything is just so much more chilled out, and it's more on a, well, if I'm doing chores, or like we gave them hay yesterday, so I was out there for a while with it. Like again, the whole relationship shifts again based on the physical.
Yeah, I was on 200 acres for a long time with my herd, and it was 3 to 4 horses. Sometimes others would come and go. And for a while there, I was in a tiny house. So if something scared them in the middle of the night, they would thunder over, right to the little house, and I could hear them coming in, like, protect us, or something out there.
Yeah.
And it's really different being on 10 acres now, and I'm really missing that, not having more land, and not having more of that.
And there's pros and cons to both, right?
There are.
Like, you know, when you're on self-boarding and you're on limited land and you just see the negatives, you don't see the positives. And the positives are that it forces you to set aside concentrated time. Like, I will be at the barn from this till this. And for me, when I'd arrive at the barn, my cell phone would turn off and I'm fully present. So it provides a space for that, kind of like, I guess, going to a gym or going to a yoga class versus doing yoga in your studio at home. So there's pros and cons to each side of it. And I had grown up having horses on my own land that I could just look out and see at any point, and having that level of communication. Then I moved all the way to the other extreme, and now I'm back to, so it's, all I can say is, yeah, there's clear benefits to whichever, I'm sure, as you're experiencing, to whichever setup you have, and to just, you know, I wish I'd focused more on, well, I didn't know because I didn't have the contrast at that time, but there were certainly clear benefits to having them on a separate piece of land that I then drove to. And yeah.
Yeah, it was reminding me of having all the land again when I watched the video of yours coming in, where you had the cubes laid out and you were
Yeah.
waiting for them to come down, and then it ended up being a problem with the gate. But just seeing and hearing them come in, there was just something about that I miss. Wow. So I'm looking at the time here. We have a little bit of time left, and what else do you want to talk about? What else is, what are passionate things that are up for you right now?
Well, it's interesting because I've moved to this more, again, on the land. And, you know, now I have 4 dogs and I have, well, right now 12 sheep. And so it's transitioned more to the holistic farm ranch experience rather than just the focus on the horses. And, you know, with animals, and not only that, but the dialogue with the land itself and the trees. And like, I felt very strongly that I needed to dig a second water hole for them. And so I had to enter into a dialogue with everything to go, because that's a huge thing. Like, you're going to excavate a, you know, 7-foot deep, 20-foot wide hole on a piece of land. You better talk to everybody before you do something that disruptive. So for me, everything has, and the levels of communication have expanded far beyond just listening to your horse, but the horse within an ecosystem. And everything is interdependent within that ecosystem. And now you're listening and talking to everyone. And then for me on this ranch, burdock has been a huge
Yeah, I saw that names.
Oh my Lord. And you know, the thing is, I've heard from other people that there's certain trainers, funny how they tend to be trainers, who will no longer watch my videos because they can't stand to see the burdock in the horse's manes and tails. And you're like, well, and so let me give you a few more examples. And then I had another woman who, I don't even know, 100 comments across all of my videos, and even replying to comments that other people had made, ranting at me because the horses had burdock in their manes and tails. And it didn't matter how many times I told her, listen, I can and I have removed every burr, and it doesn't even last 24 hours. Within 5 hours, they're all back in. So what is it you're saying to me here? You're asking me to do something that is impossible. And then her rants were like, no, you are responsible because you purchased that land and you brought the horses to that land. I'm like, well, would you rather they had died in the slot? Like, and I'm like, what is really going on here? Like, how and why is burdock pushing the buttons of these? Like, she must have spent hours commenting on all my YouTube videos.
So that's really just fascinating to me, because like, first it's like, what is her trauma or experience,
right,
around something like that? But then in another way, it's like, I want to ask, how is the burdock serving? Like, it's like, I'm thinking there's some purpose that it's serving, because if the horses, I mean, burdock is way down there. If they wanted to avoid some of it, it seems like maybe they could. I don't know how much.
hello,
like,
yes, they could. They have 160 acres. They don't have to graze where the burdock is.
Okay, so it's not everywhere. So then like
Nope.
the other question is like, what are they pointing at? Because sometimes horses will bring your attention to things in the physical world like that. My horses do that all the time. I mean, my lead mare would show me where she thinks the water should be. She'll show me
Yeah,
where she showed me where I didn't know there was water on the
yeah,
larger property. Like they know they're really connected with the
yeah.
land. So it's like, is something out of balance? Is the burdock saying something? You know, there's like all of these other questions that people miss when they're stuck in their judgments, but there's a reason they're stuck too. And
Exactly.
there's a story to that.
Exactly. And I think again, like that's part of the medicine of burdock. Like for burdock to have the ability to trigger those people so powerfully,
Mm,
that's a strong medicine, right? And I'm just checking the time because I'm going to talk a little bit about burdock because all those questions you asked,
mhm.
100%. Absolutely. And so part of my journey, because of course, now if I'm here, I've not just got burdock in my horses, I've got it all over my dogs and coming in my house and sticking in me. And like, it's like, because as the animals pick it up, they move it all over the ranch. Right. And so first question, what is the purpose of burdock? Why is burdock here? This land was massively, horribly overgrazed by cattle for 15 years solid. Guess what state the land is in? It is compacted. It has no minerals left. And I know that because I've always given my horses free choice minerals.
And they're
And
not eating them up.
they are literally vacuuming them up here because they're not getting any minerals from the forage. There's like 100 different plants here, but they don't contain minerals. So the horses are supplementing, self-supplementing. So what does burdock and thistle and all those super annoying plants do? They have the long tap roots that pull the minerals up from deep in the earth and put them back into the topsoil. So I don't even want to get rid of burdock. I want burdock to do that. And burdock can, how long would it take me to remineralize the soil? Like going out there with a powdered mineral blend and don't even go there. That's absolutely ridiculous. It would take me years. It would cost me tens of thousands of dollars. Or I can just let burdock and thistle and mullein and all the other plants that come when soil is destroyed and disturbed and, depleted, do that job for me in probably 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
Right. So for me and then the other part of it, when I was hitting a peak of frustration myself with burdock, is I was like, right, I'm going out there, I'm going to meditate with you. So I went out to a patch and I dropped into meditative state. And at that point, burdock said to me, go and get a plant. You must hold us. You must experience. So burdock had me, and I was such resistance to going over taking a burdock plant, but I did it. And then once I did, and I started pulling apart, and it was like explore every piece, like understand this knowledge in your physical body, like get to know me physically. And as I was like, wait a minute, the stalks of burdock were like ropey. I'm like, why aren't they making rope out of burdock? Like with sisal, right? Or why aren't we making cloth out of burdock, like flax?
Mhm.
Right? Like, and so all of a sudden, all these ideas, and then the stalk itself was so woody. I was like, I wonder if you could make DMSO, which is a healing substance that I use extensively with my gut people to dissolve scar tissue, right? So if you have scar tissue inside your intestines, there's no way you're going to function properly. You normally have to go for surgery. Well, we have a protocol that actually softens and dissolves that scar tissue, and DMSO is a huge part of it. DMSO is derived from tree bark. But I'm looking at the burdock, I'm going, this is like a tree. This is not like a plant stalk. This is like a small tree. So now I'm thinking, so burdock says, as all these ideas are flooding me, as I sit with burdock and I explore her, burdock says to me, you can cut us down, but don't get rid of all of us. Don't leave some good patches because you are going to need us in the future. And I was like,